Gerhard Bloom here, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. Today I'd like to look at some common misconceptions surrounding socialism, but I should offer some comments in the wake of the death of Queen Elizabeth II. An absolute tragedy. Yes, for years I was completely deluded on this issue amongst other many issues, of course, because I graduated from university with a graduate degree, spent years of becoming increasingly more stupid. I thought the monarchy was antiquated and associated with colonial oppression. Utter nonsense. First off, the Queen of England, who just passed, was an absolute exemplar in what it means to live up to moral duty and responsibilities. During the Second World War, she drove an ambulance through the streets of London. And London at that time was a very dangerous place, being bombed by Nazi Germany. Right? Held her head high, shouldered the duties of responsibility, and represented herself, the country of England, and the Commonwealth with great dignity, and was just an outstanding figure. And then we have Meghan Markle. Yes, rich, privileged, narcissistic princesses. Yeah, they can be oppressed too. She's black. Well, you'd never guess it by looking at her, but yes, she's black, and obviously oppressed. As she was going around whilst in England, tyrannizing the servants working for her. Absolutely disgusting. And now she's telling her tale of oppression and woe. Yeah, princesses too can be oppressed. But quickly discussing the topic of colonialism. Yes, there were mistakes made. There was oppression. There was exploitation. But not all empires are created equal, right? The Persians had a massive extractive empire. Genghis Khan had a massive empire. The Ottoman Empire perpetrated a major genocide in the 20th century, right? The Ottoman Empire, right? And what did they bring in their wake? Nothing positive, right? And you look at the Belgian Empire, right? In the Congo, it was merciless and extractive and brought nothing good, just tragedy. The British Empire, what did it bring to its colonial countries? Well, it brought stability, the rule of law, a bureaucracy. It improved the education, the sanitation, the healthcare, literacy, right? In India alone, built a massive railway system. It was Britain that united India, right? Before the colony of India, India was entirely fractured. There was no country, there was no nation state of India. That was the creation of the British. And also ended sati, the practice of sati, where a wife is socially compelled to jump on the bonfire that's burning her deceased husband, right? She's socially compelled. And sometimes not just socially compelled, she is literally thrown on top of the funeral pile. Britain ended that practice, right? It united the country, bridges, irrigation, canals, literacy, telephone, the telegraph. Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, acknowledged his debt to Indian colonialism. And in terms of extracting wealth, there were individuals who made vast sums of money. The truth is, the British public was losing money on the deal. The colonies were costing the government and the people of Britain money, right? Not making them money. Individuals made money, they did not. So, utter nonsense. After the colonies ended, after a number of former colonies of Britain gained sovereignty, wealth and well-being plummeted, absolutely plummeted. Now, why might that be? Kleptocratic governments, tribalism, right? very quickly filling that vacuum, tribal loyalties, kleptocratic governments, and socialist experimentation, right? There's an excellent book, Why Nations Fail. Two authors, Amagulo is the last name of one of the authors, highly recommended, Why Nations Fail, right? Africa was not poor because it was an exploited colony. You might not realize this. You should, though. It's an obvious one. Hong Kong was a British colony, doing very well, right? Absolutely stunningly, right? And Africa, its economies are growing. They're lifting themselves out of poverty, still beset with tribal divisions and hatred and animosities, but they're more and more seeking to join international trade, free markets, and enough experimenting with socialist governments and economies. Speaking of that, India, after independence, adopted democratic socialism, kept people in poverty for decades and decades. No, it wasn't a legacy of colonialism. It was democratic socialism, right? So socialism is not the answer. And repeatedly I encounter this. Well, socialism, what have you got against universal health care and education and road building? These people are absolutely deluded. A public healthcare system or a public education system is not the equivalent of socialism, right? No, nonsense, right? They say, the Scandinavian countries, they're not socialist countries, right? They have robust social welfare networks and education system and all sorts of government giveaways. What pays for it all? Free market capitalism pays for it all, right? Not socialist governments, right? It's not a socialist economy. It's a free market economy that's heavily taxed and redistributes. And lest you think there's no cost to this, I talk about this in my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. 1940s, 1950s. Remember, this is before civil rights movement and legislation, changes in laws and constitutions. Before that, the wealth gap between blacks and whites was narrowing. Both blacks and whites, wealth was increasing, education standards increasing. Blacks were increasing faster than whites. They were narrowing that gap. This absolutely stalled and in some cases reversed after the Civil Rights War was won. Now, this has nothing to do with the granting of civil rights. That was a remarkable victory and an important one. Great. What it was, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society program. The black community was seduced to go on welfare dependency, right? Single parenthood skyrocketed, and I mean skyrocketed during that period. The breakdown of the black family and set off generations of welfare dependency. School achievement started to plummet, and the rates of violent crime rapidly accelerated in the black community, inner city black community, right? Anyways, why might there be this love of socialism amongst the rich and the pampered? Well, quite simply, socialist rule, it's absolute authority, right? They want power. This is from Leon Trotsky, right? Leon Trotsky was one of the leading figures in the Soviet Union, one of the candidates likely to take over after the death of Lenin, who's a murderous villain too, right? People idealize Lenin. No, the policies that Stalin adopted after the death of Lenin were murderous and a continuation of the policies of Lenin. And Trotsky was equally as villainous, although he got ice-picked to death in Mexico City by agents of Stalin, right? So this from Leon Trotsky. In a country where the sole employer is the state, opposition means slow starvation. The old principle, who does not work shall not eat, has been replaced by a new one. Who does not obey shall not eat, right? Yes, this is from Trotsky, right? You don't obey the state, you die. And in fact, even millions of people, China, Soviet Union, obeying the state, starved to death nonetheless, right? Mass starvation in the Ukraine, artificially contrived, absolutely unnecessary. Millions starved into submission to turn privately owned farms into communal farming enterprises, and Mao Zedong in China followed the same policy with the same catastrophic results, only the body count was significantly higher. So frequently, socialism, mass starvation, tyranny, death, corruption, and the elite lives of rich and they live the lives of the rich and famous, time after time, because you need to give these senior bureaucrats handsome incentive packages, private villas, medical facilities that the rest of the citizens can't go to, special stores, right? Special stores where they can buy luxury goods that the rest of the citizens don't have access to. This is in socialist utopian countries, right? Now, recently, Joe Biden goes on air and accusing the Trump supporters as being semi-fascist. And he'll quickly I'm not talking about all Republicans, but just the MAGA supporters. Well, the vast majority of the conservatives, Republicans, are on Donald Trump's side, right? And notwithstanding that, very quickly into the speech, he moves rapidly from the MAGA supporters for people who don't support his agenda. They're semi-fascist. Well, this is utter nonsense. You might not know, but I certainly do know, that fascism and its racialized expression, Nazism, were from the very beginning socialist enterprises, right? The originator of fascism was Benito Mussolini in Italy. Benito Mussolini spent most of his adult life as a radical socialist, right? A radical socialist. And then he came up with the great idea of nationalism fused with socialism. This is fascism. And instead of state-controlled enterprises, the enterprises can stay in business as long as they serve the state, right? This has an eerie resemblance to the FBI talking to Zuckerberg and getting Zuckerberg to suppress Hunter Biden's laptop story, right? Which was not Russian disinformation, no. Evidence of a deeply corrupt criminal enterprise in the Biden family. Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, his brother Beau, millions of dollars from China, deeply corrupt Russia, and deeply corrupt Ukraine. Joe Biden knows about it because there's, look at figure, I think Tony's his first name, Tony Bobulinski. He was in those transactions and was very clear about it. And there are photographs of Joe Biden meeting Hunter Biden's corrupt business partners. And he alleges he didn't know anything about Hunter Biden's business dealings, didn't know anything about him, right? Wrong. Knew all about them, and that whole family is crooked as a dog's hind leg. So back to fascism and socialism, right? And Hitler was most definitely a socialist, right? It's right there in the damn name. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, aka the Nazi Party. That's right, right there in the name, right? And yes, Hitler was following Mussolini, fusing socialism with nationalism. This is fascism. And, an added twist to this is, the racialization of this entire enterprise. But it was socialist. And, I spoke about Mussolini spending virtually his entire adult life being a radical socialist. But rather than socialism on a global scale, like the communist internationalists, Mussolini wanted National Socialism. Hitler followed this inspiration. And there are countless examples of Hitler discussing this. Here is one of his open declarations. This was a public speech declaring his commitment to socialism. Hitler's declaration, right? We are socialists. We are the enemies of today's capitalist system for the exploitation of the economically weak, with its unfair salaries, with its unseemly evaluation of human being according to wealth and property instead of responsibility and performance. And we are determined to destroy the system under all conditions, right? Adolf Hitler, public speech in Munich, right? And this is quoted from Toyland's biography, Adolf Hitler, 1976, right? It's leftist authoritarianism that is the threat here, not conservatives, right? Conservatives want to conserve our freedom and our rights, right? It's right there in the damn name, conservatives, right? They don't want state coercion. They don't want state power, right? They want the minimal state, right? Absolute confusion. And no, the Nordic countries aren't socialist. Absolute nonsense, right? They're free market economies. Anyways, I do hope you'll check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice, available on Amazon. Not important because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues couldn't be more important. Thank you so much for your time. Please drop a thumbs up, and please do check out my book. Bye-bye.